Kissed with vanilla and silky smooth, a vanilla cream ale is a perfect brew for your next summer bash. It's reminiscent of a cream soda and so easy to drink, you're not going to want to put it down. I'm TheBruSho, and this is The Brew Show. Let's make a vanilla cream ale. Cream ales are one of those unique beer styles. Not quite an ale, not quite a lager, but somewhere in between. Or even some kind of hybrid. In fact, cream ales can really be made with either strain of yeast, even both at times. Cream ales originated during pre-Prohibition times in the US, as a response to the ever-popular European lagers. And it was at one time one of the most popular beers in the US. But over time, it's fallen out of fashion, and it's a bit harder to find. A few standout beers across the country still exist, but it's never risen to the status that it once had. There are a few key characteristics to a great cream ale. First is a dry, crisp, and refreshing finish by having a well-attenuated beer. And second is fermenting it cool to minimize any esters or phenols and leave you with a clean and slightly creamy brew. Speaking of cream ales actually don't have any cream in them at all. The name actually refers to the mouthfeel you get, suggesting that it has a creamy, easy-to-drink flavor. Cream ales are like the American version of a Kolsch in some ways. An ale fermented cool, but with the distinction being that cream ales often use some form of adjunct, either rice or corn, to give it a lighter flavor profile. The recipe I'm making today is inspired by a famous beer here in California called Cali Creamin by Mother Earth Brew Co. in Vista, California. And while I wouldn't say this is a direct clone, it's certainly inspired by it. Cali Creamin is a bright, crisp cream ale with a good amount of vanilla flavor. It's the type of beer that you can bring to a party and almost anyone will enjoy it. And that's exactly my goal with this beer. So with that, let's brew. For this recipe, I'm making a 5-gallon batch using the brew in a bag method. As always, I'll have the recipe and products I use in the description box. To start, I heat up 6 gallons of water up to about 156 degrees. I'm using distilled water because the malt bill is fairly simple and I want a beer that has a light body. I want to ensure that I can build up my water profile to the desired levels and not have water with too much minerality. Speaking of water adjustments, I'm going to be adding some to improve the flavor. This is especially required if you're working with distilled water, as it's essentially a blank slate and the beer needs some minerals to taste and perform well. If you're looking to learn more about water adjustments, be sure to check out my video on it. I'm going for a basic lager profile, and here are my target levels. Once the water is heated up, I add the grain bag and then I add the grains. For that, I'm using 74% Pilsner for a clean base maltiness, 11% Flaked Corn to lighten the malt character and play into those corn flavors common in the style, 9% Acid Malt purely to drop the pH of the mash, much like you would do with lactic or phosphoric acid, 3% Carapils to aid in head retention and enhance the mouthfeel for a more creamy texture, and 3% Honey Malt for a slight honey-like sweetness and some added complexity. The last 3 I added there are optional. You could really go simple and just use Pilsner and Flaked Corn if you want. I just wanted to add a touch of uniqueness to this brew. I plan to mash at 151 for 45 minutes. Mashing at 151 will help drive our final gravity down more to really dry this out in the end. After the mash time's up, it's time to pull the grains and squeeze the bag. I then take about a gallon of warm water and pour it over the bag to sparge or rinse the grains. Once the grains are out of the way, I bring the wort to a boil for 45 minutes. Since I'm using a lot of Pilsner and some Flaked Corn, I'm going to boil for 45 minutes to help drive off some of that DMS precursor so I can ensure a clean tasting brew. After boiling for a while, with 20 minutes left, it's time to add hops. I'm adding a half ounce of Warrior for roughly 18 IBUs. Warrior is a great clean bittering hop with a fairly low noticeable flavor. If anything, I get a slight citrusy thing from it. Do you ever brew clone recipes? Where else do you find inspiration for your brews? I'd love to know, let me know in the comments. At the end of the 15-minute mark, I add a Whirlfloc tablet and a wort chiller. In the last 5 minutes of the boil, I'm going to add in some nutrients for the yeast. My go-to combo, DAP and Fermento. The reason I'm adding them is because the malt bill is fairly light. And again, I want to be sure that the yeast have everything they need for a healthy fermentation so I can limit the off-flavor production. Then at the end of the boil, I turn on the chiller to cool down. I also take a quick gravity reading while I wait. I get an original gravity of 1.043. Once the wort is cooled down to about 65 degrees, I transfer it into the fermenter. Here's where you can get a bit creative with the yeast choice. There are some great cream ale specific strains, like the one from White Labs, which is actually a blend of ale and lager yeast, or you can go for a clean fermenting ale yeast, like US-05. But with this batch, I decided to go for W3470 from Fermentis. While technically not an ale strain, I find this yeast performs great in that middle range of 60 to 65 degrees. But seriously, go for whatever you like in a cream ale, as long as it's clean fermenting and attenuates well. Don't worry, I won't tell. I made a quick yeast starter the night before, and then pitched it on brew day. I gave the fermenter a good shake, and then set it in my fermenting bucket with some ice packs to ferment at about 65 degrees for 7 days. If you have a firm chamber, then this is no problem. But if you're doing this bucket method, just remember to change the ice packs regularly to keep the temps down. If you ever have any questions about brewing, feel free to reach out to me at TheBruSho on Instagram, or you can join on the Discord server. There's a link to join in the description. After 7 days of total fermentation, airlock activity had slowed down, so I decided to ramp the temp up a few degrees for a diacetyl rest to help clean up any of those buttery aromas that might be present. I find sometimes that 3470 can have a little bit of diacetyl, and doing this can help the yeast clean up that off flavor. Then finally, a few days later, I took a final gravity reading and got 1.009, meaning this one comes in at 4.5%. We officially have beer. An important factor to cream ale is a period of cold conditioning or lagering to get a crystal clear brew. If you have a way to cold crash and hold the temp low, around 40 degrees, that's great, do that. But as of right now, I don't, so I'm just going to keg it up and try to be patient. Before transferring to the keg, it's now time to add in that vanilla to bring in the cream soda flavor. You can go many ways with this. If you want, you can use fresh vanilla beans. But to keep things simple, I'm just going to use some high quality vanilla extract. I'm going for about 3 ounces in this 5-gallon batch. In my previous runs of this recipe, 3 ounces was just the right amount to play as an accent to the cream ale. But if you're a fan of Cali Creamin, then you know they do not hold back on that vanilla flavor. So if you want, you can always add a little more, but just go slow so you don't overdo it. I then purged the keg with CO2 to minimize oxidation, and then transferred the beer in. And once it was all in, I set the PSI on the regulator to about 10 PSI and let it sit for 1 week. If you can, let it cold condition longer, like 2 weeks. But I personally couldn't wait any longer. So after 1 week, it was officially ready to drink. The color is a beautiful light straw with a slight golden hue. And on top, a nice creamy white head. The clarity is pretty solid too, but not as bright as I'd hoped. Another reason why cold conditioning a little longer is ideal if you really want that crystal clear look. On the aroma, I get a light cracker scent, as well as a tiny bit of the corn coming through. And at the very end is a hint of that sweet vanilla. And when I take a taste, it's immediately smooth and creamy. The first sip almost goes down too easy. So on the second sip, I get more of that light cracker and corn flavor that I got in the aroma. And that vanilla really pops forward at the end to give this a cream soda-like flavor. But it's not overwhelming, just enough to let you know that it's there without masking the crisp beer flavor. The dry finish makes this super easy to sip on, and it's balanced out by that sweet vanilla flavor. And with it only being 4.5%, this beer is highly crushable. If you never tried making a cream ale, you have to give it a go. Perfect for sipping on a summer day like the 4th of July. There really isn't a more perfect pairing. So cheers to you all. Whether you celebrate Independence Day or not, get out there and brew a cream ale. Thanks for watching and happy brewing. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it and subscribe for more videos like this.